The first thing Billionaire Richard Harrison noticed wasn't the math book. It was the laughter. He had just returned. Home hours earlier than expected after a billion-dollar business deal collapsed at the last minute. His mansion, usually silent during the afternoon, echoed with the sound of his 10-year-old son laughing harder than Richard had heard in months. The sound led him toward the servants' quarters. As he stepped closer, he stopped cold. There, sitting on the old wooden floor beside a laundry basket, was Angela, the quiet black maid who cleaned the house every day. In front of her sat Richard's son, Ethan, with pages of algebra, fractions, and geometry spread across the floor. Angela wasn't cleaning. She was teaching, not only teaching, but explaining complex math problems in ways that made Ethan's eyes light up with understanding. Richard's face darkened. What exactly is going on here? The room fell completely silent. Angela slowly stood up. Ethan looked, terrified. Neither of them realized that what was about to happen would completely change every life inside that mansion, forever. Before we continue this unforgettable story, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who believes kindness can change lives. Don't forget to subscribe to Kindness of Power for more powerful, true-to-life stories that inspire hope and compassion. We'd also love to know where you're watching from, so comment your city and country below. Now, let's continue. Richard Harrison wasn't just rich. He was one of the most respected technology entrepreneurs in America. Newspapers called him a genius. Investors called him fearless. But inside his enormous mansion, he was simply a father struggling to raise his only child after losing his wife, Emily, 5 years earlier. Since Emily's death, Richard buried himself in work. Money wasn't the problem. Time was. Ethan had everything a boy could ask for. Expensive toys, private tutors, luxury vacations. But the one thing he desperately needed was his father's attention. Recently, Ethan's grades had begun slipping, especially math, his elite private. School warned Richard that Ethan was dangerously close to failing the upcoming state examination. Richard hired the most expensive tutors money could buy. None of them succeeded. Each one taught formulas. None of them reached Ethan's heart. Angela noticed everything. She had worked in the Harrison household for almost 3 years. Most people barely remembered her name. She quietly cleaned bedrooms, folded laundry, washed dishes, and disappeared before anyone looked twice. But every afternoon, while dusting the upstairs hallway, she heard Ethan struggling through online tutoring sessions. She watched frustration replace confidence. She watched a bright little boy begin, believing he was stupid. Angela knew that feeling. Growing up in a poor neighborhood, teachers had once told her she would never amount to anything, yet numbers had always made sense to her. Math wasn't about memorizing, it was about understanding patterns. Years ago, she'd earned scholarships, and even completed 2 years of engineering, college. Then life changed. Her mother became seriously ill, medical bills swallowed. Every dollar, Angela left school. She worked 2 jobs. When her mother passed away, the dream of becoming an engineer disappeared with her. Eventually, she found work as a housekeeper. No one ever asked about the woman behind the uniform. No one knew what she'd sacrificed. One afternoon, Angela found Ethan sitting alone in the kitchen with tears rolling down his cheeks. "I'll never pass," he whispered. "My dad's going to be disappointed." Angela hesitated. House rules clearly stated that employees weren't supposed to interfere with family matters, but she couldn't ignore a hurting child. "What part don't you understand?" she asked gently. Ethan pointed to a page full of fractions. Angela smiled. Instead of opening the textbook, she grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl, then another. Soon, oranges, spoons, cookies, and juice glasses became math problems. Fractions suddenly became slices of fruit. Percentages became pieces of chocolate. Geometry became dinner plates. Within 20 minutes, Ethan solved problems he'd been struggling with for weeks. His confidence returned almost instantly. "You're the best teacher ever," he shouted. Angela laughed. "I didn't teach you. I just helped you see it." From that day forward, whenever Richard worked late, Ethan would secretly ask Angela for help after she finished her chores. The lessons happened in quiet corners of the mansion, sometimes in the kitchen, sometimes in the garden, sometimes on the laundry room floor. Angela never accepted money. She simply wanted the boy to believe in himself again. Week after week, Ethan transformed. He stopped fearing math. Instead, he began asking questions. He became curious, excited, hopeful, but secrets have a way of revealing themselves. That rainy Tuesday afternoon, Richard came home unexpectedly, and now he stood there staring at the unbelievable scene. "What gives you the authority to tutor my son?" he demanded. Angela lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry." "Sir?" He asked for help. "I didn't mean any disrespect." Richard's voice grew colder. "I hired professional tutors. What makes you think you're qualified?" Angela remained silent. Not because she lacked an answer, but because experience had taught her something painful. People rarely believed someone wearing a maid's uniform. Ethan stepped forward. "Dad, please." "She's amazing," Richard interrupted sharply. "Enough!" He looked directly at Angela. "From now on, your responsibility is cleaning this house, nothing more." The disappointment in Ethan's eyes was impossible to ignore. Angela quietly gathered the books. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Then she returned to polishing the hallway as if nothing had happened. That evening, Ethan barely touched his dinner. Richard noticed, but pride kept him from apologizing. Instead, he convinced himself he had protected professional boundaries. He had no idea. The biggest surprise of his entire life was only days away. The days after Richard stopped Angela from tutoring, Ethan were painfully quiet. The laughter that had once echoed through the mansion disappeared. The dining table became silent again, even the expensive tutors noticed something had changed. Ethan no longer asked questions. He simply stared at the pages, answered with shrugs, and counted the minutes until each lesson ended. Richard convinced himself that time would fix everything. But the morning of Ethan's math examination arrived, and his son looked more nervous than ever. As Richard drove him to school, he tried to offer encouragement. "You'll do fine." Ethan forced a smile. "I'll try." "Dad." Richard watched him walk through the school doors, carrying more fear than confidence. 3 hours later, the examination ended. The results would be released the following week. For Ethan, those 7 days felt like forever. For Richard, they became a time of reflection. He couldn't stop thinking about what he had seen in the laundry room. It wasn't just the math lesson. It was the joy on Ethan's face, the genuine happiness, something no expensive tutor had ever managed to create. When the results were finally announced, Richard received a call from the school's principal. "Mr. Harrison," she said excitedly, "would you be able to come to the school this afternoon?" Richard's heart sank. He assumed the worst. Instead, he walked into the principal's office to find Ethan sitting there with the biggest smile on his face. "Congratulations," the principal said. "Your son earned one of the highest math scores in the entire 5th grade. Richard froze. "That can't be right." The principal handed him the exam. Every difficult question had been solved correctly, even the advanced bonus section. "We've never seen such remarkable improvement in such a short period," she continued. "What changed?" Richard slowly turned toward Ethan. His son looked down before quietly answering. "I remembered everything Angela taught me." The room fell silent. For the first time, Richard realized that the woman he had dismissed had accomplished what every elite tutor had failed to do. But the surprises weren't over. The principal smiled. "I'd actually like to meet this Angela. Anyone capable of inspiring a child like this has an extraordinary gift." Richard drove home without saying a word. His thoughts raced the entire journey. Had he judged someone simply because of her job? Had he confused a person's position with their potential? That evening, he found Angela quietly folding fresh towels in the laundry room. "Angela," she looked up nervously. "Yes, sir?" "I owe you an apology." She blinked in surprise. I assumed I knew your abilities without ever asking about your story. I was wrong. Angela smiled politely. It's all right. Mr. Harrison. No, Richard replied, it isn't. I judged you before I knew you. He paused. Would you tell me something? Where did you learn mathematics? For the first time since working in the mansion, Angela shared the story she had kept hidden. She spoke about growing up in poverty, about winning academic competitions, about earning a scholarship to study engineering, about leaving college to care for her sick mother, about losing everything except the knowledge she carried inside her. Richard listened without interrupting. By the time she finished, he felt ashamed. He had spent years searching for talent in boardrooms and universities, yet extraordinary talent had been working quietly under his own roof. The following morning, Richard made several phone calls. Within days, he arranged for Angela to meet the dean of a respected engineering university. Her previous academic records were located. Former professors still remembered her brilliance. One even said, Angela was one of the most gifted students we ever had. Richard offered to pay every remaining tuition fee if she wished to complete her degree. Angela's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to thank you. Richard shook his head. You already have. You helped my son believe in himself. Father can never repay that. Months passed. Angela returned to university. She attended classes during the day and continued working part-time until graduation. Richard adjusted her schedule so she could pursue her dream. Ethan became her biggest supporter. Every evening, he proudly asked, What did you learn today, Miss Angela? She would laugh and answer, The same thing I taught you. Never stop asking questions. 4 years later, the Harrison family gathered once again, this time, not in the mansion, but inside a university auditorium. Angela walked across the graduation stage to receive her engineering degree with highest honors. The audience erupted in applause. Richard stood first, then Ethan. Soon, everyone else followed. As Angela accepted her diploma, she looked toward the crowd. She saw the little boy who had once believed he wasn't smart enough. Now he dreamed of becoming an engineer, too. After the ceremony, Ethan hugged her tightly. You didn't just teach me math, you taught me courage. Richard smiled through misty eyes. And you taught me something even more valuable. Never measure someone's worth by the uniform they wear. Several years later, Angela founded a nonprofit organization that provided free math tutoring and STEM education to children from underserved communities. Hundreds of students discovered confidence. Through her patient teaching, many earned scholarships, some became teachers themselves, others became engineers, scientists, and innovators. Every child who walked through her classroom carried forward the same lesson she had once shared with Ethan on the laundry room floor. Understanding is more powerful than memorization. Kindness is more powerful than judgment. And sometimes the person the world overlooks is the very person capable of changing it. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this inspiring story. If it touched your heart, please subscribe to Kindness of Power, like this video, and share it with someone who believes in giving people a chance before judging them. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind us that compassion, humility, and kindness can transform lives. Until next time, remember, greatness often hides in the most unexpected places.